I just saw Karen.
Yep, Karen's back. Okay.
Karen's
All
back.
right. All right. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining the first mentor advisory panel for the HP MAT program 3.0 edition. My name is Tunde Agboke, and I am very excited to be here to moderate a discussion around how mentors can handle stress. The two mentor advisors that we have joining us today are Karen Gentry and Kathy McCartha. I would love it if we could get a quick introduction from both of our mentor advisors, so all of our mentors on the call can kind of understand a little bit more about the both of you. So Kathy, you want to kick us off?
Yes, Tunde, thank you. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining. I'm Kathy McCartha, and I am based in Houston, Texas. I've been with HP now almost 7 years, and I support a large group of K through 12 customers, as well as higher education customers here. So the largest customer I have is Houston ISD with 250,000 students, 300 campuses, and all kinds of technology programs. So I understand the challenges, of course, of and widely respect the challenges that today's teachers have of trying to integrate, technology and the digital equity and inclusion and all the programs that HP is supporting. So we're super passionate about that. I've been in the world of IT almost 40 years. So I've been working across corporate America as well as now public sector. So have a wide variety of background there. I am so excited Tunde included me in this program. So that's a little bit about myself. Thanks, Tunde.
Thank you, Kathy. Karen?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm also in Houston, Texas, and at HP working in the Worldwide Education Group. I'm really excited to be here. I am traditionally a business person. I have never been a teacher in the classroom, but prior to coming to HP, I was in the education space as a support, working with an education nonprofit. And prior to that, I was actually part of a public education advocacy group called Leadership ISD. And so I have a big passion for teachers and the support staff within the school and the impact that a school and a teacher can have on a student's life. It can really change the trajectory of that student's family, and the whole community. So I'm honored to be here with all of you, and thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you both for those introductions, and I'm really excited to get into this conversation because, as you both mentioned, both of you have experience with the education field, and you've both been really passionate about getting involved with everything we're doing, 1 million teachers. So I appreciate your time today. So kind of let's jump right into it. We're going to have a live Q&A, but to kick things off, I just want to start with one first question. And I guess we can kick this to you first, Karen. Do you currently have a mentee that you're mentoring, either in any form or fashion, whether it's within education or outside education?
Yes, she's outside of education, but I do have a mentee that I've been working with. And actually over the past 3 years, I always have at least one mentee, and it is an organic relationship that kind of evolves. It's never really a formal relationship, but it turns into a mentee-mentor relationship.
And Kathy, yourself, do you have a mentee?
I do. I have several, and have had that throughout my life in terms of, like Karen's point, it could be someone connected at work or someone, outside of your network, but I always strive to learn something new every day. And, since I've been in the field for a while, I've got different background, different awareness, and some of the mentees that I connect with are young in their career. So we don't necessarily just talk about technology or, their current job. It could be work styles, hybrid, topics like this. I'm stressed because of all of the things we're juggling in our lives, right? So sometimes it's just a connection and sharing thoughts, and I learn as much from them as hopefully they do from me. So it's a two-way street for sure.
Exactly.
Love that. Love that. And we're actually going to get into that a little bit in terms of reverse mentorship. But what I want to talk about now is I know, as you are both aware, that all of the mentors who are part of HP MAT, right? The whole goal and ambition of the program is to continuously cascade how we create new mentors, right? So they were once mentees and now they're mentors, and hopefully their mentees become mentors in the future, right? So I guess one thing that I want to learn from the both of you in terms of when you're trying to deal with the stress of being a mentor, how do you balance your personal responsibilities along with your work responsibilities, now along with additional mentor responsibilities that you've put upon yourself, right? How do you find the balance to make sure that you're not being overwhelmed? Kathy, you can go first if you don't mind.
Sure. I think what I try to do on that, Tunde, is I'm a people person. I love meeting new folks, learning things, sharing ideas. But what I try to do, because our daily jobs and get busy, and as to your point, if you're a mentee, mentees typically learning or waiting for the mentor maybe to come up with ideas and topic points. So now as you're a mentor, what I try to do is have at least 2 or 3 ideas for that conversation. Conversation can go this way or that way, but in other words, don't just set time to connect with your mentee and say, oh, how's your day? What do you want to talk about? Try to have a few guiding conversation points. And it can obviously deviate, but it just really helps to, guide the conversation. And then once you're talking about a few things, more topics come up, more questions come up, and that relationship develops further. But that seems to work for me.
Love that. I completely agree. Kind of let it be organic and build off the conversation as it grows. Thank you for that. Karen?
Yeah, I think that, I'm someone who always keeps myself way too busy, and I'm always complaining that I'm too busy, but then I keep putting myself in situations where I'm doing a million things at once. And I find that my calendar is just the biggest tool to help me manage, my life. So it's like, okay, during this time, I'm blocking off time. I'm going to dedicate 30 minutes to really think through the conversation before it even happens. And I find that, blocking off time for work and personal and the mentor relationship really helps. I also think that, kind of to piggyback off of what Kathy was saying is we typically, think through what are areas that this person would like to talk through. And what I do is, I actually have a spreadsheet where I'll kind of take notes of, so my current mentee, she's really wanting to work on how can she influence if she doesn't have authority. And so we're talking through how do you think about what the other party wants and needs, and how do you tailor your messaging to that other party? And so we actually have like practice sessions of, okay, this was the scenario I ran into at work, and let's practice how I went through it, and now let's let you practice. So even though the mentor-mentee relationship is another commitment, to my calendar, I've always left every session feeling very energized. And so, as you guys are going through this, just keep that in mind, that, make time for the activities and relationships that energize you. Because even though it's, another 30 minutes or an hour, it's on top of what you're already doing, that hour or 30 minutes is going to re-energize you for the next day or the next thing that's on your list. And so I think that's how I keep it all balanced, is I prioritize my time. I use my calendar religiously. Like if it's not on my calendar, I'm not doing it. But then also I remember that, after every session, I walk away feeling way more energized and engaged in my own life. And so that's kind of my advice to you guys, is keep those 2 things in your mind as you go through this.
I love that. I agree. I'm a big believer in routines to help kind of manage stress, so you're not getting overwhelmed, and then taking that time to yourself, right, to re-energize. So that's enough questions from me. We want to get live questions from you all as mentors. You all are the ones going through the HP MAT journey. What questions do you all have related to stress management for our mentor advisors? feel free to drop it in the chat, or you could just come off mute. And I know you all aren't shy because I see the WhatsApp chats and it's nonstop. So definitely don't be shy here, please.
Okay. Hi today. Thank you for organizing this, and thank you to all the HP executives. I think one of the things that I sometimes find hard is the time management and trying to fit everything in.
Thank you, Fatima, for that comment. And before I kind of pivot off of that, I just want to make sure we acknowledge you, because she's thanking me for putting this together, but she's actually the one who runs everything related to the 1MT Black Belt program, which everybody is essentially HP and Hakeem Rizma. None of this gets done without her kind of managing the ship and directing everybody. So you're thanking me, but we're all here because of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So I think question pivoting off her point there, question to you, Kathy and Karen. As you're trying to figure out time management and not overload yourself, what do you think about the concept of I think somebody, there we go. What do you both think of the concept of reverse mentorship and how that can at some point kind of alleviate some of the stress, right? Making sure there's an equal kind of sense of responsibility between you and the mentee. Kathy?
Yeah, I like that idea. And I really want to second what Karen was saying. I try to go into my meetings as a mentor, or I am a mentee, right? I've got mentors myself, but I try to carve out, whether it's 15 minutes or 10 minutes. Sometimes we get so busy. And I did this to myself the other day. I had 9 conference calls back to back to back, and it was just one of those busy days. But you just have to make sure to block a little bit of time just to, kind of reset, think about, like to Karen's point, what you want to get out of that conversation, which it's going to be a two-way street. And I look at that, whether I'm being mentored or whether I'm a mentee, I look at those conversations as one and the same. We're all learning together. It's as you're a mentor, you don't have to go into that conversation stress going, I have to teach this, this teacher, I have to give all this information, all this knowledge I have in 30 minutes. It's a few talking points. And as Tunde was saying, it's a conversation starter, and it's more relaxed, and you're just connecting with that individual and developing that relationship. And that helps tremendously in that reverse mentor process, at least for me.
Thank you, Kathy. Karen?
Yeah, I think in the reverse mentorship aspect, so my most recent mentee, when we actually kickstarted our relationship as mentor-mentee, she asked me, she said, so I'm just wondering, like, what are you going to get out of this? Because I don't want it to be one-sided. And the reality is that the strengths that she has, she's an incredibly technical person. She's a chemical engineer, and I'm not as technical. I'm much more a person that lives in the clouds, right? So, I kind of come into the conversation with just one question I have for her as well. So I think about the things that are on her list, her objectives, but then I also am like, okay, so I have 3 talking points for her. But here's a question I would like to ask her of, like, how do I really hone in on, the details, and what are the techniques and strategies that she uses for that, which is something that I'm not as good at. And so I think with the reverse mentorship, you will always learn whether you go in with a specific question or not, because you're interacting with another human who has a unique set of skills that you likely yourself don't have, because we're all unique beings. But I think it also helps to go into the conversations with asking that other person about their strengths and identifying something that they are strong in that maybe you would like to grow in, right? And so I still spend the majority of the conversation focusing on the things that she wants to grow in, and how can I provide perspective in my own experience. But then, you know, maybe one thing that I, at the end of the conversation, like, oh, and by the way, I'd really like to pick your brain about this. And so I think that's a good way to approach the reverse mentorship, and both people walk away feeling good. She doesn't feel like she's only taking, and she also gets to be the giver. And so I think that that's fulfilling for both people.
Love that feedback from both of you. Thank you. And we've got several questions coming up in the chat, so I'm just going to dive into it. And so the first one we've got in the chat, even though we're here to talk about kind of stress management, our first question is actually, what do you find most joyful about being a mentor? Like, what's the best part about being a mentor?
I can jump in. I think I'm not a teacher. I haven't been in the classroom in a traditional sense, but you all will relate to this, I think, immensely. Is there's something really magical about sharing something. And most of the time, you know, when I'm having these conversations, I'm just sharing, like, this is how I think about it. This is how I handled it. Here's where I would have liked to handle it differently. And when you see someone being like, wow, okay, that's really valuable, there's something magical about that light bulb moment that is just incredible. So, you know, I think the biggest joy for me is that teaching element, even though it's not a traditional, like, here's my lesson plan and all of that. You kind of take joy in knowing that your experiences and perspectives are helpful to someone else.
I love that. Okay, Kathy.
Yeah, I think to Karen's point too, and I saw a few questions pop up where I think some of you were asking, you know, how do you deal with maybe a mentee who's not responsive or not, you know, replying or submitting, you know, some exercises that you've asked him or her to do. I think you are teachers, right? And so you're used to lesson plans, and you're used to your students following, you know, a curriculum and learning and such. And as a mentor, mentee, I try to look at it as a little open, like Karen said. It's an awareness. That word awareness is non-threatening. And sometimes mentees might feel afraid. They might feel like you're there to critique them. And maybe they shy away from that. Oh, I don't want to attend this, or I'm not ready to talk to this individual who's smarter than me or something. And so they shy away from that. But if you use that as a conversation point, let's just talk about an awareness of, Tunde, your background and what you do. And, you know, all of you are unique. We all have different experiences that we can bring to the table. And those are, I try to look at the mentee mentor as conversations. They're conversations to bring in awareness and facilitate learnings. But if the mentee is looking at it as, I didn't do my lesson plan, I didn't follow this, they may shy away. So that's just a little bit of feedback, I think, on that one question also that Tunde was, you know, that popped up.
Thank you, Kathy. And kind of pivoting off that question and that point, Kathy, as you pointed out, there are several comments in the chat about how you kind of manage an unresponsive mentee. So definitely, I think some of the things you pointed out work when the mentee shows up to your sessions and hasn't produced the material that you had them work on in between your sessions. I think an issue that some of the mentors want to figure out how to work around is, what do they do if the mentee is just completely unresponsive? So they haven't even got to the point to where they can give them takeaways. They just aren't responding to their emails, their text messages, anything. And I want to put that question to you all. And I will actually jump in really quick, if you all don't mind. Before that, I will say, I know in terms of HP Matt, for all the mentors on this call, I know that us as a team on the back end, if your mentee is that unresponsive, definitely reach out and let the 1MT team know. And I think there's a process that we kind of work through that with the mentee on their end. But generally speaking, Karen, Kathy, what are you all's thoughts in terms of a completely unresponsive mentee?
Yeah, real quick, because I'm off mute, and Karen certainly chime in, is, again, there has to be a reason for the unresponsiveness. A mentee, you know, if they sign up for the program, they obviously want to be mentored. But again, if they're not responding, are they afraid? Are they maybe not knowledgeable enough about what this wonderful program could bring to them? And, whether it's email, whether, I'm not sure, Hakeem, Fatima, how you reach out to them, but I've seen that as well, even at HP, that they back off even taking a meeting. So you haven't talked to them yet because they're, again, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to be critiqued. I don't know something. Everybody wants to be knowledgeable, but if they understand this is a program to grow, this is an awareness, this is a collaboration, we're not here to critique you, maybe that can help get those meetings set. And Karen?
I think, one thing that's really difficult with chat and emails is you can't hear people's tone, right? And I saw that empathy, professionalism question, and I think this all ties together. So just indulge me for a moment. But, sometimes if I'm not getting a response, in any of my kind of relationships, I will send a voice memo versus a text or an email, and I'll say, hey, I'm just kind of concerned. I care about you. I think I can help you with this. I just want to make sure everything's okay. If you want to have a conversation about what's going on, will you just please let me know? I know you can do this. I know you have all the abilities. So let's talk about, what's going on here. And I think, really focusing on that person as the human versus the things that they didn't do, right, helps, because that you never know what's going on in people's day-to-day life, right? Like we just have no idea what battles or challenges people are facing or what fears they have. So I think when you focus on the human element, it helps that person let down their guard a little bit. I also think the voice memo piece helps that other person sense your care and your concern, versus with a text, you just never know. You can send one message and you don't know what that sounds like. And so I think empathy is a big key to professionalism, because at the end of the day, we're all human, right? And so we have to connect at that human level. And I think once you can demonstrate your desire to connect with that human level, I think that unresponsiveness could decrease a little bit, and sometimes it could be just, hey, do you want to have a phone call and tell me what's going on? I just want to make sure that this is successful for you. And I want to understand how we can make this work for you. Sometimes people will call and say, this is the hesitation I have, or, I'm just underwater with X, Y, Z. And so I think having empathy is going to be a key, especially with the people who have any hesitation or are struggling. So I think that's my biggest advice. I think the last piece I want to add on that, and I know I'm so verbose, guys, but hopefully this is helpful, is that I think another piece is having accountability, right? That if someone is showing up and they don't have the things maybe done that they're supposed to, like I've seen some in the chat about assignments or those sorts of things, I think you can care about people and hold them to a high standard. So you can say, hey, that I'm kind of surprised because I know you're a rock star. So tell me what's going on. That we talked about having this ready for our next conversation and you don't, and help me understand, right? And so while people are going to initially be like, people want to be held to a high standard. They want you to think that they are a rock star. And so just verbalize that. Say, hey, I know you're a rock star. I know you can do this. For the next conversation, I really want you to bring this. This is important. And people will respect you for holding them to that high standard.
I love that. Thank you both. And before we pivot to the last question, Hakeem or Fatima, did you all want to kind of talk about a little bit about specifically HP Mat and what the mentors can do if they have an unresponsive mentee?
Yes, I've been kind of itching to say something. I'm sure Fatima is too, because this is a very familiar terrain. We've heard it over and over in every cohort. And what I just want to say, and just also piggybacking on what Karen said, empathy, professionalism, like it just keeps echoing back to me as she was talking, over and over again. And we've seen this situation, even for those who were not a black belt, we've seen somebody just drop off and then for whatever reason, and then they come back months after. and then they go like so fast and they're completed. So when in conversation, we've seen like people are going up through all kinds of situations, and we really don't know. And you know, Karen, you said something about, and I think Kathy, you also mentioned something like that around maybe they're afraid, you know, they don't want to tell you what is going on, you know. So there are many people involved. They're going through all kinds of drama. Some people are even changing jobs. Some have like personal situations that they don't even want anybody else to know. So I think sometimes we can respectfully give them that space. And for every mentor who has been impacted this way, please reach out to Fatima so that we can find ways to reach them on your behalf. And if after several attempts that is not working, then we know that, well, at least you've given it your best efforts. But I mean, you can't be 100%. So, thank you, Tunde.
Of course. Fatima, did you want to jump in there too?
Yeah, I think, like you've all said, we try our best to reach out. We try to call them when people say their mentee is not responsive to the email. Have you tried to do a WhatsApp call? Have you tried to call them? If you're in the same country, you can try to make a call. So we do try our best. But the other thing is that we had so many people applying to be mentees compared to the number of mentors we have. So at the end of the day, we can only try so much. But I do agree in showing empathy. But then after a while, we do move on to the next person. If that person is not responsive, maybe they don't know what is expected, or maybe they do have reasons. And then when they do come back in the future, we do try to still match them up, or they can move on to the next cohort. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I know you all work extremely hard to be empathetic and work through everybody's issues. I remember in year one of this program, there was an unresponsive mentee, and we ended up finding out that mentee was essentially homeless and was in the process of trying to find a new place to live. So it's kind of hard to worry about making a mentor call when you don't have a place to live. So I definitely understand and appreciate you all being empathetic. And I know we're already over, but there's one last question in there that I think it's important that we cover before we drop. And the question is about, for you as a mentor, when you have just a horrible day, it's an extremely stressful day, it's not a good day for you, you're in a bad physical and psychological place, right? But you have a mentor called planned that day. What is your approach? Are you canceling that meeting and saying you need some you time, or you go ahead and you're going to make that meeting, or does it depend? Kathy?
Well, I would obviously say it depends, but I would also say really try to make that meeting unless there is a true emergency or you're not in the right, state mentally, you're just exhausted, right? But I think, Karen, you put something in the chat that's very important, is sometimes I'm at that state where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted. And I have this meeting that it's not with a customer, or it's not with a, it's not a critical meeting, I guess I should say, like contracts or something. I could easily cancel or move that to a different date, but I want to take that meeting because then I feel energized. Then it's a different scenario. It's a conversation. I really, really try. And if you cancel too quickly, also it gives the signal to your mentee that he or she could easily cancel because they have busy days too. And then I think that's tough. You want to set that standard, a high standard for yourself and a high standard for your mentee. That connection is key. Now, again, we all know there's circumstances, sick children, emergencies, family matters, what have you. We understand that, but I try my best not to miss those meetings.
Yeah, I think, Hakeem, were you going to say something?
No, I just wanted to piggyback on Kathy, but I'll wait for you to be done. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I think that one of the things that I've been working on in my life as a professional and as a person is really gauging my feelings. And so as cheesy as it might sound, I would, at the end of your day, kind of rate, like on a stress level on a 1 to 10, 10 being that, you can't even function. And, 1 being like, it's not great, but it's okay. I would get in the practice of evaluating yourself and where you are emotionally and your stress levels, so that when those days happen, you're like, okay, today was a really tough day, but I'm at a 6. And I think I can go into this meeting and still add value. And so to Kathy's point, try to not miss those meetings in conjunction with rating your stress level, because you might put yourself at an 8, still show up to the meeting and walk away being like, wow, I'm so glad I went to that. I feel much better. I feel better than I thought I would. And so if you can actually do that self-reflection before those days happen, and it's just part of your own personal practice, then the days where, kind of things are hitting the fan, if you will, you'll have a good sense of, can I handle this or can't I handle this? And you never want to push yourself past you don't want to show up to a meeting not able to contribute and in a really bad place. But if you can gain some self-awareness around at what point do you just have to step away, I think that'll help you make those judgment calls, in a more systematic way versus being on the spot right then and there.
Thank you, Karen. Hakeem, you wanted to jump in?
What's there to add again? I was going to piggyback. Karen, thank you so much. I think you articulated it so much better than I could. It's just fantastic to see, because a lot of times we show up not because we're comfortable or we're in a good place, but we show up anyway. And it turns out several times in my situation anyways.
Perfect. Well, again, just wanted to say, Hakeem, were you still talking, Hakeem? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So what I'm saying is that a lot of times we show up because it's part of our duty, part of our commitment, and that sends a signal to other people. If we were to act the way we feel all the time, I think most of us will not show up to work. Really, the summary of it.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you all for sharing your insights. I think this has been a really great conversation. Really appreciate everyone taking the time to join the call and participate in our first mentor panel. The second mentor panel is happening April 25th, and it's going to be on leadership and emotional intelligence. Again, thank you all for joining. We really appreciate your participation in HP Mat, and thank you very much. Everyone have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care.
Thank you for your time.
Have a great day too.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you,
Bye-bye.
sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.